Good morning, guys. For the next few lessons, we're going to be revisiting and developing our knowledge on rearranging equations. So the first thing I want you to do is think about this word subject. I want you to think, what does this word actually mean? It doesn't necessarily need to be a mathematical definition, just think about all the times you've heard that word before, inside a maths lesson and outside a maths lesson. Just what does that word actually mean? Okay, so according to the Oxford Dictionary, subject means the thing that is being discussed, considered, or studied. Okay, so it's the main thing that you're looking at. It's the thing you are considering at the time. Okay, so for these four questions, I'm asking myself, is A the subject? For this first equation, is A the subject? Is A the thing that we are considering? Well, the answer is no, it's not. The subject of this first equation is y, because the whole equation is equal to y. So A is not the subject of this first equation. Is A the subject of this second equation? Yes, it is, because it's just A equals something. So A is the thing that we are considering at the time, and A is isolated on its own. Okay, for the third one, yes, A is the subject. So it doesn't matter if it's on the right hand side of the equation, as long as A is isolated on its own, A is the subject. Okay, and then for the last one, might surprise you, maybe not, but A is not the subject of this last equation. So think about why before I tell you. So A is not the subject of this equation because, well, yes, we do like the fact that A is on its own, but there's also another A on the right hand side of the equation. So A is not the subject yet. A is only the subject when it's just A equals something and that A is on its own. Okay, so please could you find task 1 on the worksheet that I've attached for you on Google Classroom, and for each of these equations I want you to ask yourself, is A the subject? All you need to do, write yes or no or Y or N if you find that quicker. And here are your solutions. Okay, so let's see if we can make X the subject of this first equation. So you should be familiar with this equation because it's the equation of a general straight line. Okay, so y equals mx plus c. All we want is x on its own, so we don't need that plus c there, do we? So let's subtract c from both sides. So that tells me that y minus c equals mx. But remember, I'm trying to make x the subject, so I just want x on its own. Okay, so how do I get from mx to just x on its own? Well, if I divide both sides by m, so that gives me x equals y minus c all divided by m, and this is my answer, and x is now the subject. So please could you pause the video and make x the subject of this formula on the right. Okay, so we just want x on its own, so that positive c, that plus c, that does not need to be there. So the opposite of adding c is taking away c, so that tells me that y minus c equals abx. Okay, how do I get from abx to just x on its own? Well, this AB doesn't need to be there, so let's divide both sides by AB. So that tells me that x is just y minus c all over AB, and this is my answer because x is now the subject. Okay, so if you find task 2 on your worksheet, it's lots of practice of that rearranging skill that we just discussed. And here are your solutions. Okay, so let's develop this a bit more then. Okay, so some of these are going to get a little bit trickier, so we've got some negatives in one of these examples as well. Okay, so I just want x on its own, so that positive 6 has no reason to be there, does it? So if I subtract 6 from both sides, let's see what happens. Well, that will give me y minus 6 equals x over b squared. That divided by b squared, so remember that line just means divide, that does not need to be there. All I want is x on its own because I'm trying to make x the subject. So what's the opposite of dividing by b squared? Well, it's multiplying by b squared. So if I times both sides by b squared, that gives me b squared times by y minus 6 equals x. And I'm keeping my brackets there because I'm multiplying this whole side by b squared. So the whole side has 2 terms. That's why I'm keeping those brackets there. Okay, so please could you pause the video and have a go at your example on the right. Okay, so let's think about what we're trying to do. We want x to be the subject. So at the moment, I don't need that positive root 6 there, do I? All I want is x on its own. So let's start by eliminating this part of the right-hand side of the equation. What's the opposite of adding root 6? Well, I'm going to subtract root 6 from both sides. So y minus root 6 equals negative x over b squared. Okay, so it's looking a little bit tricky. I've got that negative sign there, but I'm just going to leave that for now. I'm going to deal with that at the end. First of all, I'm going to eliminate this divided by b squared. Well, just like before, what's the opposite of dividing by b squared? Well, I'm going to multiply by b squared. So I'm going to do that to both sides, remembering to keep my brackets. Okay, and now I've got all of that is equal to negative x. But I want to make x a subject. At the moment, negative x is the subject of my equation. So how do I get rid of a negative x? So how can I change that negative to a positive? Well, if I multiply both sides by negative 1, well, negative 1 times negative x, well, negative multiplied by negative gives me a positive. So that tells me that positive x is negative b squared lots of y minus root 6. So mathematically what we've done, we've multiplied both sides by negative 1, but what it actually looks like, I've just swapped the signs around. Yeah, so just that negative became a positive and this positive became a negative. Okay, so at this stage, please can you find task 3 on your worksheet on Google Classroom, and your answers are on the sheet as well. Okay, so any problems at all, please just give me a message on Google Classroom. Thank you very much.